Hello and welcome to the CRE News Hour, where we have a weekly podcast at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we come to you live to discuss current events and everything. I'm here with my co-host, Rafael Collazo. How you doing today?
What's up, man? Doing great. Can't complain. Christmas is right around the corner, so I got some good presents for my wife and just getting ready for the holiday season. How about yourself?
I'm doing incredible, my man. Excited, feeling good, feeling alive. Miami's finally feeling like Miami. You know, there was a couple days where it's like a crazy storm out, which actually I think was going on across the entire East Coast, from what I heard. A bunch of my properties out in Jersey had some crazy issues as well. So, anyways, everything's good. Back to sunny days and beautiful weather. So, feeling good.
Good for you, man. It's pretty chilly out here now. I'm not too thrilled with it, but we'll be making a pivot here soon. I'm going to be actually heading to see my brother in Argentina sometime in February, so that'll be a kind of a change of pace on the weather side. So,
well, I was going to make a comment because you're in a coat inside, so I was going to say it
yeah,
probably seems pretty cold out there.
yeah, it's cold, but I think I've maybe coming down with something because I've been kind of having chills the last couple days, and so I just just to warm up a little bit. It's been good. Plus, I had to run some errands before this, but I'm excited for this episode. I think it's going to be a really good one. So I'll go ahead and throw up the latest article. So this is one that again, Wall Street Journal, very reputable publication. But again, one of the things that this particular article is talking about is the investor appetite for retail real estate is heating up again. So as you're probably aware, many of you guys who are watching this, many people were down on retail real estate for a long period of time. Obviously the with the advent of online buying and how so many open air malls in general have been struggling over the last several decades. There has been kind of they painted retail kind of with a broad brush, and over really the last 5 to 10 years, retail has not been viewed as a premium asset. Obviously, the industrial properties have been viewed as a premium asset. So has multifamily. However, surprisingly, since COVID, really after COVID, there have been a significant spike in interest in retail real estate because they realize that retail is such a broad property type. It's not just the big power centers and open air malls. It incorporates strip centers, it incorporates standalone buildings, it incorporates a variety of different retail uses that can also be Amazon resistant. And what you're starting to see is a lot of these consumers are liking to go back into brick and mortar locations. And so consumer sales have been very, very strong, even though we've quote unquote supposedly been in a recession over the last year or so. Again, the retail numbers for 2022 and 2023 were extremely strong, which has driven demand for retail space. And again, they just talk a little bit about here how some of these larger institutional investors are still kind of bullish on retail going forward, and that there's been a lot of money that's been allocated towards that sector in recent years. And so I'm sure you've probably seen this on your end. I'd like to get some of your comments on the matter.
Yeah, I'm actually a lot of the deals we're actually looking at right now are smaller retail centers. I think there's a huge opportunity, like you're mentioning, to take a look at. I mean, like this is like what I hear from these types of stories is that if you know certain local markets and you have that you've done that type of research into these, and by the way, local market's relative because I'm not saying your local market. I'm saying like any local market that is doing well. Right? Because there are markets all around the country that are doing well and some are doing poorly, right? Mm-hmm. For any asset class, there's multifamily markets right now that are doing poorly. There are, office that are doing poorly, industrial doing poorly, retail doing poorly in certain markets. And there's also the opposite in some markets. So I think that it's important to note that like, I am super bullish on just about any asset class for that matter, except for really office, in the right markets. Right. There's a couple of retail centers that we're looking at right now that we're getting unbelievable prices on this type of stuff with very, very lucrative upside. We're looking at IRRs in, mid to high 20s, if not 30s on some of the deals we're looking at right now all over the state of New Jersey. So it's like, this is an awesome reminder to know that like, hey, there are still unbelievable opportunities in just about every asset in the right markets. And if you know where to find them, you can take advantage.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing that insight regarding, because again, real estate is specific to the area because there's, for example, here in Louisville, there's different parts of town that are, good for retail activity and some that maybe aren't. And there's probably good areas of town that are focused on, industrial versus others. So understanding your local market and getting a feel for what areas of the town and what markets in general are going to be performing at a high level, depending on your property type. That's obviously extremely important. And, what you're excellent at too is deal structure. So even if it, the sector of maybe the market is maybe not performing as highly when you compare it on a national level, if you're able to structure a deal to make it extremely attractive to do either that exact same use or maybe convert it into something completely different, there also exist opportunities. So, obviously it's coupling your knowledge with creativity. Obviously that's going to benefit you in the long run as an investor. So
Yeah, I think that to your point, I think that it's like there are certain markets. I'll give an example. I have an office in Red Bank, New Jersey. In Red Bank, New Jersey, it's a kind of a small town feel. It's maybe a little over maybe 1 square mile. I mean, it's not big, right? It's about 1 square mile. Not a big town. And a lot of the retail in that area has incredibly high dollar per square foot rents. However, there's not a lot of mom and pop retail centers there. They're more it's like a downtown where like they're all connected. Like there's not huge pieces, there's not shopping centers, right? It's just storefronts in this one strip of downtown. Okay. And that being because of that, where the main drag is, it's very hard to find great deals per se. Okay. Where yes, the retail market is pretty good. There's not especially right now, there's not a lot of vacancy. My family we have a lot of property there. My family bought 50 plus years ago in this one specific area. What's interesting though, is that like, this is not a market where just because retail is doing unbelievably well per se, it's not a market that I would be calling these retail storefronts because it's going to be very hard to get a good deal. There's like those in-between markets you can find strip centers of multiple stores, which is diversification at its finest, right? Because if you have only one storefront, it's like who's going to buy one storefront in a downtown? Like it's just like who's going to buy 2,000 or 3,000 square foot, one single storefront with nothing upstairs, like not a mixed use, just single store. You're probably going to get an owner occupant who might buy that. It's going to be, unless you're going to get a really good deal, it's going to be very hard to sell that to an investor because the returns just aren't there, right? But if you can find in a secondary market right outside of Red Bank, there's a couple key markets that I can look at that have a little bit more size to a center where you can probably get 6 stores, 4, 6, 8, 10 stores. And you have the right diversification with a fairly good rental rate where you have the ability to get high IRR. You can achieve good IRRs, internal rates of return, over a period of time. So it's really doing that intricate work and knowing what type of market to be targeting. It just, more to your point that, having to know your lucrative area.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So next up is mortgage rates drop below 7%, retail sales rise, and jobless claims edge lower.
Yeah, so I wanted to point this out. I'm actually going to flip this over to the right banner so you can see now interest rates. We're under 7%, people. I know we had mentioned this before, but I want to keep reiterating. This is a good thing. Rates are going in the right direction. You should be excited. I feel fantastic. I know we were talking about this before. We are both very bullish on 2024. I think it's going to be a fantastic year. Let this just be a great reminder for everyone out there that, listen, interest rates do play a massive role in the amount of business that happens in the commercial real estate world. But regardless of what interest rates are, there are still a lot of opportunities. But this is just a fantastic reminder to know I think we're over the hump here, and we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. And again, and we've already seen the Fed just recently met, I believe, on December 12th and 13th. They've kind of instituted the same type of policy where they're going to hold to their Fed funds target rate for now. But, there's been a lot of speculation. And not only that, they've surveyed various other economists, and they do believe that rates will continue to inch lower in 2024. There's still a lot of pent-up demand. So I think what's great about this trend downward as far as interest rates are concerned is that it's going to unleash more opportunities for people to buy and transact in the market come in 2024. So, if 2023, for whatever reason, and again, it's from a transactional volume standpoint, it was definitely one of the slower years that we've had in the last few years. I think wait for 2024. I think it's going to be a phenomenal year. And obviously you should be setting the groundwork right now so you can capitalize when the market, when you're able to see some of these interest rates come to fruition.
Yeah, and the cool part also, last thing I'll point out, and we can obviously jump to the next, but this is very, very smart. people who prospect through tough times, okay, people who've been consistently prospecting through 7+% interest rates, okay, over the last like 12-ish months or more, okay, those deals that were not a deal prior to because of interest rates are slowly now becoming deals. So what happens commonly is that you spoke to somebody this year and they go, oh, it wasn't a good deal because they wanted, let's just say they were trying to sell at a 7.5% cap rate, an 8% cap rate, even a 9% cap rate, and it did not make sense because of where interest rates are. Typically, people do not increase their prices that fast. So if they wanted $2 million this year, and you can call them back next year when interest rates are 5.5% or 5%, 6%, whatever they are, because the interest rates are dropping, there's going to be a deal to be had. So just keep those people in the pipeline, keep in touch with those people. It'll be a really, really good time to follow up with some of those decent leads.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. All right. So next up, and the reason I'm sharing this particular article is because obviously there's a lot of contrast in between what people think is going to happen versus others. And so, Forbes is definitely not necessarily one of the publications that I follow too regularly because of the fact that they tend to have these types of articles that somewhat are doom and gloom. But, it's kind of an important topic kind of to discuss. It kind of talks a little bit about, the vacancy phenomenon in most central business districts. It harps on the, one of the highlights in this particular article, they're referencing San Francisco's problem. Obviously that San Francisco's downtown has been greatly affected by what's been happening with COVID. A lot of these major technology companies have realized that a lot of their employees don't necessarily want to go back into the office. And so they're starting to sublease their space. And they kind of referenced here that Salesforce actually moved out of its East Tower location in San Francisco and essentially are looking to sublease 700,000 square feet of commercial space across 2 locations. This is a similar type of shift that's occurred in some other major markets as well. So again, they're kind of, trying to read the tea leaves and say, okay, well, since lease rates are down, vacancies up, loans are coming due, there's a liquidity is an issue. They're speculating there's going to be, a massive issue when it comes to, renewing of these notes. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that is maybe true if there were no outside forces at play. But oftentimes what happens, especially in situations like this, where it's such a potentially cataclysmic type of event, oftentimes what ends up happening is the Fed or other government agencies step in to fill the backstop. That's what happened in the global financial crisis. It happened in the savings and loans crisis. It's happened even recently when you're dealing in the Silicon Valley Bank, for example. Some of the failures, there had to be some backstops in place to be able to minimize some of the impact of that from spreading to other banks. So I probably, unfortunately, it's probably going to end up happening. You're going to see a lot of these, office buildings come due as far as loans are concerned, and there will likely be some money that is backstopped to be able to support these banks. And then you'll probably see a lot of these banks, instead of taking the office properties back, like you may have seen, pre-financial crisis, but during the global financial crisis, a lot of these institutions, what they were selling was the paper. So I'm sure most of these banks don't want to take on the responsibility of owning and managing these office buildings. They'll probably start selling the paper to, other people who want to essentially take that note and then service the debt themselves. Hopefully this provides some relief to people who are owning these larger office buildings. And at some point the market will begin to stabilize, but just wanted to kind of get your take on this. Again, it's kind of a similar type of story that you've seen in a lot of different publications, but that it's a little bit more context to it.
Yeah, I think that I have two thoughts with this. Okay, like you had mentioned, this is going to continuously show up for the foreseeable future. We're going to continuously see a lot of these major office buildings come to this choice point of like, hey, we're either going to give this thing back to the bank or something's got to change, right? Like something's got to give here. And what I think happens is that us average everyday commercial brokers, right? We are not going to be involved in these deals. So like, what can I do to take advantage of this? I think that what you can do is that you can start building relationships with these larger investment institutions that are looking for these opportunities to have the development experience. And you can start taking, like, I'm not saying that you're going to be a part of a $2.5 billion transaction or whatever deal size this is. That's not what I'm getting at. What I am getting at is saying like, hey, the people who are going to be buying these deals are Blackstone, these major organizations who have a ton of capital, and then they cannot wait for these buildings to be coming to the market where they can buy for 20 cents on the dollar, 10 cents on the dollar. they're waiting for these opportunities where they can take advantage and convert them. But this is not something where you're going to be able to get involved on a very regular basis. However, you can go find the in-between developers, the developers who are looking for this type of situation on a much smaller scale. And you can try to find your local office buildings that are seeing very similar issues in your local market, right? Where like, hey, what we've been doing out in New Jersey is we're trying to find a couple key office some developers and got big time office players where we come across office buildings fairly regularly. One of my sales guys just came across a 300,000 square foot office building that's experiencing some of the same types of frustrations as you're seeing here, much smaller scale. And what we're working on is trying to structure great deals for those types of investors on those types of deals. We're like, well, again, we're not going to get involved in this type of deal, but we might be able to get involved in something kind of similar. But you need to have the buyer first. And we're not going to be working with Blackstone probably anytime soon. Even though Blackstone, if you're watching this, I'd love to work. We'd love to work with you. And try to find you some opportunities. But I know my place on the scale here. So we're trying to find just smaller opportunities where we could take advantage of the same type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously this kind of indicates as well that there may be opportunities with establishing strong relationships with lenders. Just in my experience, I had a disposition of a foreclosure lot. I sold a Walmart outlot that was a foreclosure. And that's just through a connection that I had to a lawyer that ultimately introduced me to someone at a bank. They needed a representation when it came to disposing of property. And I just so happened to be that person to fill the void. So, don't underestimate the value of building strong relationships with your regional and local banks as well, because they do have real estate needs, and they're probably going to end up having real estate needs in the future, in particular if they start foreclosing. And obviously there won't be a wave of foreclosures. And I think you and I are in agreement in this. It's not going to be nearly as what you saw in the global financial crisis, but there will still be opportunities. So if you can establish strong relationships with the right banks and the right people within those banks, it could be a pretty lucrative opportunity as well. Just thought I'd share that insight on that.
Absolutely.
Front.
Yeah. And just, again, keep in mind that, like, look, the only real thing that we're going to see, quote, in a pipeline of foreclosures is really just these very, very large, mall-like properties, huge office complexes. I mean, it's going to be this kind of product that's probably going to be coming to the foreclosure markets, not a lot of the small stuff. So anyways, this is a great article. This is about, retailers. If you scroll down in this article, this is like top leasing. This is a fantastic article, by the way. If anyone wants to look this up, I believe this was from CoStar, so it's in the news section. If you go through this, I think this is a very, very lucrative article in a lot of different ways. So one part right here, if this is perfect where you're scrolling to here, keep going. Mm-hmm. So this section right here, this actually breaks down the actual tenants that are signing signing for a bunch of space right now. So if you have properties that you need to lease out, guess what? Go through this list, and you should be getting in touch with the real estate departments of each of these types of companies. This is public information, people. Public information. So you can reach out to the real estate departments of all these companies: Wingstop, Starbucks, Yum Brands, Dutch Brothers. It's funny. My cousin's from Oregon, so they started in Oregon. So I'm glad Dutch Brothers is doing well. Jersey Mike, shout out New Jersey, thank you. But I'm saying, you can, Raising Cane, Tidal Waivers, Dollar Tree. I'm not even going to say that out loud. That one sounds weird. That sounds right. But Five Below, Dollar Tree, Dollar General, General Parts. I mean, these are large companies, public information. All the information's out there. I think this is a good opportunity to say, hey, got a building, they're looking to rent out some space. These are, if you scroll down even more, I think there's one more section, or is there just that?
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, you got some.
So there's even more for larger space. Yeah. So this is a fantastic article to really see. I hope you guys are just taking some screenshots. Go look out for these types of businesses. They are constantly leasing more space. So if you have vacancies, you could be calling out to these people because they're still looking for more space.
Yeah, and I just see a few on these on the list. Publix has made a huge push here in Louisville. Crunch Fitness just expanded 3 locations here relatively recently. Five Below is making a huge push. So I can attest to the fact that these concepts are pushing. They're really looking for space, and it's actually surprisingly somewhat easy to be able to get in touch with some of these real estate departments, in particular if they are a more established brand. And so I do this all the time where, I have a particular space and I'm looking to potentially, lease out to one of these other tenants. I will go ahead and try to do all the research I can to get in touch with whoever I need to in these different departments to kind of pitch the idea. And obviously, you want to do the research ahead of time to make sure that it's in fact something that they would even be interested in, because you want to kind of nurture and build those relationships. Do some research on the front end so you're not wasting their time because you didn't realize that there was a wing stop literally 2 doors down. You want to be a little bit more nuanced how you approach that process. So,
yeah. Yeah, so I hope you guys were screenshotting some of that. I really love that article. I think that's a fantastic thing. But by the way, you actually have that ability if you have access to CoStar, where you can get that kind of data very regularly. So obviously CoStar is a little bit more on the expensive side for people who don't have access to it currently, but very, very lucrative when it comes to lease information. So if you have any vacancy, it's a great place to get some information.
absolutely. And for those of you guys who are tuning in, we would really like it if you could engage with us. Tell us where you guys are tuning in from. We're really excited to see, this particular live stream grow. So want to hear you guys' feedback. And yeah, we'll just keep on trucking along. All right. So next up is an interesting article. So Lennar puts up 11,000 unit multifamily portfolio up for sale. So Lennar is a pretty large publicly traded housing developer. So they started off primarily in the single family home, the big swaths of land to build a bunch of different properties, but they also operate in the multifamily space. And this particular announcement was somewhat surprising given the current environment. But they're looking to sell more than 11,000 apartments that are classified as, premium or high end. So one of the stats that I thought was really interesting was that here it says at the end of Q3, 70% of the nearly 1 million units under construction in the United States were considered high end apartments. So I guess one of the things that they're talking about in the article is that, there's going to be a vacuum, not necessarily a vacuum, but there's going to be somewhat of an oversupply of the higher end apartments coming into 2024, which is going to obviously increase vacancy and potentially increase concessions as well. So as we kind of talked about in previous podcasts, with you being in Miami, you see several of these newer apartment complexes just kind of, having a lot of vacancy, and they're offering different incentives. This could be somewhat of a trend, especially in major metro markets where a lot of people are moving to. So again, I thought this was kind of interesting to share.
Hold on, leave this up. This is so crazy. If you highlight in the center, Lennar on Friday, guys, this is crazy. Lennar on Friday reported right below that. Highlight this. Lennar on Friday reported its Q4 multifamily revenue stood at $141 million and recording an operating loss of $12 million. Revenue was down from $179 million in the same quarter of last year. This is why they're selling, right? The same can be said. Like, this is freaking incredible. Like, information to look at it. They're selling this because they have a money problem. They need some liquidity. And what I just, by the way, did some math, which, by the way, I don't know, but they're selling this portfolio of 11,000+ units for roughly $400,000 a unit, by the way, $400,000 a unit. I mean, that is just a crazy price, probably considering, if you really think about where Lennar's properties are, 400,000 a unit in the middle of I'm trying to figure out where, most of these.
I think most of these are in like Florida. I think most of these are like in Florida and in the Sun Belt. They're in the Sun Belt. So
I was just saying, this says I'm still like 400,000 a unit, where like I guarantee a large percentage of this inventory that they're trying to sell. Because if you see that, it could potentially earn $4.5 billion, it's probably because that's probably what they're looking for.
Yeah,
guarantee that's like a 3 cap. I'm guaranteeing you, it's probably like a 3 cap. Which in this landscape market, like for the interest rates the way they are, I mean, I don't even understand how on planet Earth they think that that's going to end up getting done. Good luck, JLL. I don't know who the heck's going to buy a 3 cap. I mean, I don't even think Blackstone's going to touch something like that. So, God bless.
Yeah. I mean, they're praying for institutional money at this point, and who knows? I mean, they're obviously not going to get what they're asking for as far as the 4.5 billion. But again, if they are able to get maybe lower than that, and I guess we don't even know their whole situation. Maybe they have to get a certain number. We're looking at a building right now here in Louisville for a client of mine who's a professional poker player. He's wanting to buy this building. It's a pretty primo building, but the people who bought it, they put in $1 million into the building. They bought it for $2 million and change. And, they're asking like 3.7 for it. They're not going to get 3. It's not even worth that amount of money. And so we've undercut them hard because we're like, dude, there's no way that you guys can support this at valuation, but they have to get a certain amount of money in order to not lose their tail on it. So who knows if this is not a particular situation that we're facing right now. I mean, it could very well be.
I was during my coaching session today. I was talking about with everybody from the group, and I was underwriting a few deals live, and I was like showing how it's like with interest rates where they are today, which even though they're lower than they were 6 months ago, they're still at a point where like even if you have a 9 cap deal and you have the most leverage, you're still leveraged to the most can possibly be leveraged to. It does not mean you have a very high cash on cash, even at a 9 cap. Right? At a 9 cap deal with higher than normal, I wouldn't say higher than normal, but like a typical amount of leverage. I'm just trying to say like, the most that a bank will lend on a property. Okay. I'm not trying to say like maximize for the amount of IRR. You're still not making that high of a rate of return at a 9 cap. Okay. So just keep in mind that like, just because it's a 9 cap deal and, the interest rates are at 6.5%, it doesn't mean that you're just not clearing the delta. That's just not how it works. Even though like it's a very much oversimplified situation. So this just is a quick reminder to say like a lot of properties are drastically, outside of the realm of sales.
Yeah. And I, that's part of our job too, is educating people. Cause a lot of times the figure that people think when they think, return is like, what's the cap rate? Like, I can't tell you how many times you talk to some investors and they're like, oh, what's the cap rate on the deal? It's like, well, the cap rate really doesn't matter. What you should be looking at is the more nuanced analysis to say, okay, well, if you put down this amount of money, what is your cash flow going to look like? What's your cash on cash return? What's your ROI over the whole period? That's going to be much more nuanced of an understanding of the investment than the cap rate. Because you're right. You could look at a deal. It could be an 8 cap. And on paper, you say, oh, an 8 cap. We haven't seen 8 caps in years. But, if interest rates are 7.5%, 8%, you're still going to be underwater on it. So it's just one of those things where, I appreciate you
or if it needs a lot of CapEx.
Oh, yeah. Or if it needs CapEx. Of course. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. So next up is self-storage rents allow for unaffordable housing market. Oh, suffer from, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So I brought this up just because like we're dealing with a lot of self-storage facilities. It's actually, a big niche that we've been focused on for the past little bit. And in some areas it's been blowing up, some instances it's slowing down. I thought this was just super fascinating because it's just, everyone, like everything is not, I'm not gonna say it's a fad. Okay. I don't want to use the word fad. I don't think that self-storage is a fad by any means, but I think this is so crazy that like for a small period of time, companies like Prime and Public Self-Storage and these huge conglomerate of companies were drastically overpaying for inventory. They just wanted to build as like they wanted to pick up as much properties as possible. Prologis did this in the industrial space. Some very large multifamily companies were doing this in the multifamily space for quite some time. That has come to an end. I don't believe that these companies, I'm talking about self-storage specifically, it's come to an end. They're not drastically overpaying for the most part, unless it's like the most unbelievable location, unbelievable property, and like they're just not overpaying like they used to. So this is just coming to, just another reminder for me. Hey, you have like, we're at the end of the trend. Like we're at the end of this huge wave of people, quote, overpaying, the wave of self-storage. It's just not what it used to be. So we still have to find better deals, more, and like maybe something else will come up where like the next thing, like hypothetically, I don't know what the next big thing will be, but there are going to be people being overpaying in just every single type of smaller niche markets over time. So I don't know. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this.
No, yeah, I think you're right. And, again, when you talk to investors and obviously, there's levels of sophistication with investors, and some are extremely sophisticated. They understand the nuances of different markets and they're really in tune with the ebbs and flows of different property types. And then there's also other investors who have cash to be able to invest, but maybe they're not the most nuanced. Maybe they read a book about self-storage, or maybe they read a book about multifamily, or maybe they watched a couple of YouTube videos and they say, oh, well, this seems like a really good investment. But I think what this article highlights is that, even though you have some gurus out there saying that self-storage, multifamily, they're recession-resistant properties, again, when demand, it's all about demand supply. If there's oversupply, then you're going to have issues, right? Go ahead.
Yeah. So this is actually interesting too, because like we've been talking about, so if you actually read some of this really quickly,
Yeah.
In Miami, it says right here, in Miami, same store street rates for combined NCC units decreased 9.1% year over year in November. And while same store asking rates for climate control units for the same fell 7.6% year over the past year. This is drastically due just to, like you were talking about, which is, I was just going to bring up the same thing, supply and demand. There's a lot more self-storage facilities because it became the new thing. There's a ton of people getting in the world. And honestly, by the time you hear this type of stuff, you're 2 years too late. Right? This was huge 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, right? People wish they had more self-storage available during COVID because everybody needed it, right? Now, to be blunt, like it's just not what it used to be, especially in most of these super big markets. Like in Miami, there's a massive oversupply. Same thing with apartments. There's a massive oversupply of apartments and they keep building more of it in certain areas. We're like, why do we need more apartments here in Miami for right now? Because there's so, there's not the demand there used to be. So anyways, just, everything comes to, through these cycles, and we just have to be paying attention to what part of the cycle we're actually in.
Absolutely. Yeah. What are your thoughts on car washes? Because I obviously represented some car wash dealers or operators here. It seems like they're just, when you talk about underwriting, like lenders love them for some whatever reason. I just don't understand how they're able to pay what they're paying. And then obviously these developments, you're talking about an acre lot, you have one of those the automated car wash deals, like it's like $4 to $5 million to develop this tunnel system, depending on how long the tunnel is. And so it's just making the economics work is just, it's fascinating to me. And I see some of these projections. I'm like, how in the world? So I don't know. It's funny.
I agree. Yeah. No, it's funny too. So I see the same thing out here. We've actually done a couple of car wash sales as well. I think it's just as interesting as you do. I think that the car wash multiple is actually kind of interesting to me, that they actually trade at what they trade at. I think in the right markets, I think they're actually some of the best investments you can be making. I think you can make very, very lucrative returns. Like we like self-wash car wash situations, not tunnels. I think those are fantastic where like it takes there's like literally almost zero employees required. And you can still do very, very well in some submarkets. I think that those tunnel business, I think that like you're right, you're buying a company. That's the difference. Like you're buying an actual company that has the ability to do some serious numbers. However, like take Jersey as an example. It's like in New Jersey, you're really doing well, maybe 9 months out of the year. 3 months out of the year, no one's doing shit. Right? Like there's no one's going to a car wash for almost not exactly 3 months, but you get my point. Like during the winter times, it's just much tougher to have some serious business going on with car washes. So it's a weird thing. Like it's a very interesting model where I've seen people buy a bunch of car washes, roll them up into a portfolio where you can buy a couple of them, build out a brand, and then sell the brand. Apparently some of them are doing incredibly well.
Yeah. And I think a big trend in the industry is to have the subscription model. So they'll say, okay, well, you pay $40 a month or $30 a month and you get unlimited car washes. So it stabilizes cash flows, even in situations like you said, where, January, December, February, where maybe you're not having so much people coming through the car wash. It's kind of like a set it and forget it, where you just don't even realize you're paying the $40 a month when it comes to your car washes. And that's like a pretty common trend. It's just, again, it's just an interesting thing. I mean, I probably, again, yeah. So, all right. So next up is no one is declaring victory as Fed hints at cuts, hold steady on rates. So, again, if you've ever watched some of these announcements from Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, they say it hints at cuts. He's the most like straight laced. He doesn't hit at anything. He doesn't want to say anything that's essentially going to, move people one way or another. And so if you did actually watch the announcement, he was very, very reserved when it came to what his status was going to be going forward as far as the next, several months were concerned. He said that things were trending in the right direction. They're seeing strong growth that appears to be moderating. Again, that's the whole point of trying to constrict the monetary supply, is to slow down the economy. We don't want to get into a situation where you have hyperinflation, because then it becomes impossible for people to afford everything, and it creates a very bad situation. You've seen it in other parts of history. So again, they're bullish on the fact, or they're positive on the fact that the growth does seem to be slowing. There's positive indicators as far as job growth. There's the interest rates the inflation rate, again, is continuing to tick downwards. And so some of the projections that economists and some people that they've surveyed in the industry, that what they're saying is that they project that the Fed funds rate will be at 4.6% by the end of 2024, 3.6 by the end of 2025, and 2.9% by the end of 2026. Currently, it's in that 5% to 5.5% range. And again, just because the Fed funds target rate is where it's at, doesn't necessarily mean that interest rates are going to be at that rate, right? It's a decent indicator, but it doesn't correlate 100%. So obviously, as it trends downward, the logic is that the rate that's offered to the marketplace, that's usually tied to the 5-year Treasury and the 10-year Treasury, are going to follow suit. But it's not a foregone conclusion. But again, there's a lot of speculation in this article talking about how the fact that 2024 is an election year, and if you look at historically how the interest rates tend to operate in those times, they tend to dip down a little bit. It's kind of like a little boost prior to the actual election taking place. So again, there's some speculation involved in a lot of things they were talking about in this particular article, but there was also some hard numbers like the 10-year Treasury and other things where they talked to various different stakeholders that could potentially shed some light on what the future holds. But as far as Chairman Powell's concerned, he was very much, like I said, straight-laced, didn't want to say anything, which I can definitely understand his position, but just wanted to kind of get your take, Henry.
Yeah, I think that we've talked about this a few times where 2024 looked to be, we're quite optimistic for 2024. I would be blown away if really by 2025 or 6 that we're actually somewhere in the 5%, in the 4% or 3% interest rate world. Obviously, I know that there's going to be a difference between the federal funds rate and what the actual interest rates are going to be, but it's still good news to hear. It's obviously much more positive, words to be hearing from this type of like where we're hearing it from, like from hearing it from Powell and from the individuals of the government. It's nice to hear this because unlike what we were hearing, a year ago, where it's like, hey, we're basically headed towards, who knows how high of interest. Like, it was very, very scary. This puts your mind at ease. This is like exciting news. This is saying like, hey, if I stay focused the next few years, the future looks bright. The opportunities are going to be ahead of us. So this is just good news. Makes me smile. I like to hear it. I mean, like, obviously, I'm not stupid to thinking that like this is going to happen fast. I think it's going to take several years to get to a fairly decent interest rate again. I don't think we'll ever see 2s again, but I still am very optimistic where the future of commercial real estate is heading.
Yeah, 100%. And even a lot of these announcements, and I encourage people, like, put the meetings on your calendar just to kind of get a feel for it, because it really does. It's amazing to see the response that the market has every time these announcements occur. So, for example, in this particular meeting, once Chairman Powell provided his feedback and announcement, the markets went crazy. Like, they went up by 1.4%. Reached an all-time high, higher than they've ever even gotten during COVID. So we hit an all-time high. And that's just because people were like on eggshells. They're saying, are they going to raise rates again? And when Chairman Powell said, no, we're not going to raise rates, and things are looking optimistic, again, we're humans, right? You hear that good news and you're like, okay, let's go do stuff, right? So that's how the markets responded to that news. And so that's just an additional data point that you can use to kind of, share with clients or share with investors or share with owners and say, look, like, there's positive trends in this direction. You want to kind of get ahead of the curve when it comes to, 2024 or beyond. So just thought I'd share that context.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely makes me sleep good at night hearing that, once I hear that Jerome Powell is feeling pretty good about the economy. So quite excited.
Yeah. So, and actually in between, these articles, we'd love to hear your feedback. Again, feel free to type away in the chat box. Along with that, if you guys have any deals that you'd like us to look at or analyze, feel free to reach out to us. We've been starting to do deal analysis live on our stream as well. So maybe that, if we see a deal come in from you guys and we think it's a good fit, maybe we'll even analyze it live. But if you guys want to, go at deals@crenewshour.com. Feel free to send us an email at that email. Again, that's deals@crenewshour.com.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback around underwriting deals, so we're definitely interested in seeing what people got.
Absolutely, man. All right, so next up is industrial supply and demand should balance by the end of 2024.
Yeah, so I thought this was interesting because, like we had mentioned in regards to self storage, we were talking about multifamily, everything has a cyclical market. So, this is an interesting article that talks in regards to the industrial demand and supply kind of evening out. We've obviously had like a crazy amount of development around industrial because of everyone going nuts. Again, this was like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. If you had industrial space, all of a sudden your industrial space skyrocketed in rent values and obviously intrinsic value as well. So I think this is like talking, this makes our point in regards to now another asset class that is seeing supply and demand. I wouldn't say issues. We're coming to the point where like, hey, like there's a massive amount of supply in a lot of markets all around the country, and we're just not at that level of demand. And I think this is just interesting to read. Like, this is why you need to be ahead of the curve, because now in some submarkets where people were begging to buy properties, people were were overpaying for industrial properties. Prologis was overpaying drastically, Amazon overpaying for these large industrial buildings, and they're just not doing that anymore. They're really not. They're going back to paying below market, trying to find great properties at great prices. So this just goes to show that everything is cyclical. We're not on that end of the spectrum anymore with industrial anymore. So just keep your eyes open.
Yeah, and industrial is still very strong, but it is normalizing. I mean, again, you couldn't maintain the same level of pace that we had in 2021 and 2022. It was unsustainable. So I think,
Exactly.
even though industrial is still performing well, it's going to come. It's coming back down to earth. I mean, it was going to happen. It was a foregone conclusion. And interestingly enough, a lot of the development that has occurred in industrial and other property types have been centered in the major cities. So I'm sure Miami experienced a lot more industrial development than maybe what we did here in Louisville. Obviously
Sure.
LA and the Inland Empire. You've got Chicago's got a huge industrial presence as well. So the concentration of development obviously has been focused on some of these major markets. And again, land's expensive.
Well, it's just like this dynamic of like at the very beginning, there's not there's at the very beginning, there's not a lot of inventory, and demand starts to grow, right? And all of a sudden, as demand starts to grow, people start building a lot more, and all of a sudden, there's this peak trough situation where it's like, hey, there's not that much demand anymore, and now there's all the supply where now the rents are coming down to minimize this, there's not going to be as much development. So, it's just like the constant supply and demand curve is what we're constantly looking at, which we all need to be paying attention to. Because like you said, in Louisville, it's going to be very, very different than what it is here in downtown Miami.
Oh yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And again, and that's why we have these types of calls, right? This is why reading the news, this is why diving into different publications, watching YouTube videos, really educating yourself not only on your local market, but understanding some of the broader economic impacts at play can really be beneficial to you and ultimately the people that you try to serve. So that's my 2 cents on the matter there.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So last up, this is the last one we got. It is. In the meantime, guys, if you guys don't mind, go ahead and type away in the chat box. Tell us where you're tuning in from. I'm always shocked to see all the different people tuning in from all across the country. So would definitely appreciate you guys.
Yeah, and again, we come to you live each and every single Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We come to you live to discuss everything about commercial real estate and current events, to try to keep you abreast about what's going on, right? Like, we go through all the news articles to sift through exactly what you feel like, what we feel like you should hear, just to make sure we have some awesome articles. So what's next for us?
All right, so next up is what the soft landing could look like for CRE next year. So, again, as you probably heard, the Federal Reserve has been talking about a soft landing for the last several years. The whole concept of a soft landing is that we don't have massive job loss. We have just massive disruption in the economy. We have kind of a seamless transition into a low growth period that is not as painful as what we've seen in other, previous cycles. So this is one of the things that they kind of talked about in this particular article. It talks a little bit about, the job growth, the projections for 2023 versus 2024. Obviously, there's going to be a drop off in job growth. They project from 2023 to 2024. There's going to be 2.7 million jobs in 2023, whereas 1.7 million is projected for 2024. That's a pretty sizable drop off, but that's to be expected. They also talk about a variety of different property types. and explain what the vacancy rates and absorption is going to look like. Obviously, office just continues to get crushed, unfortunately, but they are projecting that it's going to rise by another 90 basis points to an already all-time high of 18.5%. And they touched on some of the available square footage and how it's been logged, over the course of the last, year. So that's for that. And then obviously retail absorptions continues to remain positive. That's kind of one of the surprising bright spots of the last several years has been how retail has performed in the marketplace. Similar to what we talked about in the previous article, industrial construction continues to taper. So there was new product delivered to market of industrial product of 400,000 or 400 million square feet was delivered in 2023. Seems like it's going to be roughly 360 million square feet in 2023. Not in 2024. Not a significant drop off, but it is somewhat noticeable. Vacancy rates have ticked up a little bit, is what they're projecting, by 80 basis points to 6.1%, which historically is actually still very strong for industrial. So it's going to still be a pretty solid investment. But again, like Henry had said earlier, the days of overpaying for these properties is probably gone for a while. And then obviously one of the things that I kind of highlighted and we talked about previously in the article was the concentration of these actual developments. They're concentrated in the 10 major metro areas, right? You're not going to typically see, several million square foot developments in secondary and tertiary markets. The biggest concentration of these large developments are going to be located in the Miamis of the world, the LAs of the world, the Chicagos, the New York Cities, or the New York Metro, I should say. So, again, some insights to share on that matter. What do you think, Henry?
Yeah, I love articles like this because this is exactly why we do this YouTube show, right? Like this is why we come to you live and we talk about this type of stuff, because this is why you should be spending a few hours every week really knowing about what's going on in your local market, because it will allow you to know what to focus on for prospecting, right? Because it's like, if you look at this and you go, oh, well, what are my buyers actually looking for? Well, based on this article, which is just one of several articles that we've talked about today, but based on just say the articles that we've talked about today, I probably should not be prospecting for large offices, because that's probably not what buyers are probably looking for today. Well, if I just, call a spade and just think really obviously, what do you think that people are looking for today? Well, and, it relates to this article, and again, it depends on your hyperlocal market. They're probably looking for, value add retail, value add industrial, value add multifamily. It's a very common thing. And also I would focus on hey, what specific local, in your local market, what has an overabundance of product in your local market that you're probably going to see a lot of vacancy in. Because if hypothetically in your area, I guarantee you there's a type of product that there's an overabundance of some type of product. I don't know which one it is in your local market because I don't sell in your local market, but I'll say for what I know, in Jersey, as an example, there's an overabundance of multifamily in, call it Jersey City. Right? There's just an overabundance. Everyone in the world, Jersey City is one of the highest. It was for a period of time the highest priced rental market in the country was Northern New Jersey for a very decent period of time throughout COVID. Okay, it skyrocketed because people got out of Manhattan. It went straight to the other side of the Hudson River. Went to Jersey City, and it became one of the most popular areas. Now, that being said, it now has an overabundant amount of apartments available for rent. There's a lot of vacancy in these beautiful, gorgeous luxury high rises. And guess what? If you're calling somebody who has a not so good looking, call it a very, not luxury type of building that's, call it 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years old, okay, there might be some opportunity in buying a deal at a good price and bringing it up to par, because the differentiation between that type of product and luxury prices are going to slowly come down, and this mid-tier stuff is going to slowly edge up because these people can't afford it anymore, and they're going to start coming down here. So it's just looking for those opportunities, those intricate opportunities in every single sub-market around the country, depending on where you're located and where you like to prospect, where there's going to be the major opportunities for you to make some money.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. And you can capitalize on opportunities. Knowledge in our business is power. So understanding
really is.
the different nuances of the different areas. Like as an example, I had recently sold a deal where there was a particular corridor that's a very strong retail corridor. There was a vacant property right there that used to be a mechanic shop. It had some environmental issues. It was zoned great. It had phenomenal zoning, but a lot of people were deterred from it because it had environmental issues. Now, no lender wanted to touch it. Well, there's a program out there called the Brownfields program. It's a Kentucky product program. I'm sure there's other brownfield similar types of programs in other markets. But if you put the property in that, it helps alleviate legal responsibility from the new buyer. And so I had a client who had cash, bought the building cash, put it in the Brownfields program. Now he's going to refinance in a year and a half, and he's probably going to, clear 200 grand on the actual acquisition because of the fact that it's a great location and has a phenomenal retail presence. It has a phenomenal retail opportunity. So, knowledge in that case is extreme power, because now he's been able to benefit from the situation because no one else could actually make it work. So being that advisor, being that person who understands all the tools that are available to you to make a deal work really is where you can make the magic happen. So.
Yeah, I mean, same thing with like understanding how opportunity zones work, understanding
Yeah.
how a lot of these tax credit areas work, where the different parts of the zoning map will allow you to do X, Y, and Z, which most people don't actually know where the best areas to buy buildings are based on zoning. They don't understand the zoning maps that intricately. So just taking the few extra minutes to do your research is really going to allow you to capitalize and make more money.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So we got someone tuning in from Cassidy. Hey, Cassidy. She says she's tuning in from Northern Kentucky, so just around the corner. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you. So, Raphael, let's talk about a few last things. Before we jump off today, we want to talk about the new year. Like, let's talk about setting ourselves up for success in 2024. Is there anything that you're working on that you feel like, adjustment wise, that is going to support you in having an unbelievable year next year?
Yeah, I think similar to you, it's refining the prospecting. I would say over the last year or so, I've kind of let it slip a little bit. I'll admit I just got very busy. There's been a lot of things that I've had several clients that have kept me very busy. That are just constantly transacting. And so, I've let myself get to a point where I was just not doing as much as I had done historically. And so trying to get back to that is something that is a big goal for me in 2024. Obviously, watching what you do is obviously very inspiring. So I'm looking forward to kind of following along in that regard. Along with that, I've been trying to leverage other technologies and try to leverage those into my business. So I'm starting to incorporate different AI tools into my business. I've purchased a hand. ChatGPT and leveraging some technologies that are kind of like handwriting. I think I told you offline, I bought this machine that can like actually physically write notes, and I'm incorporating that with an AI platform that can write very specific type of handwritten postcards to people. And I have my targeted list of people that I'm going to be sending mailers to, and then following up with a call, and then incorporating text campaigns where I send them links to my books, because obviously I've written 3 books in commercial real estate. So I've recorded Audible versions of all 3 of them. And so I kind of hit them on a variety of different angles where I send the postcard, then I follow up with a call and introduce myself and make myself available as far as making sure that they know that I am in the market and I'm willing to help them with whatever they need as far as commercial real estate is concerned. And then following up with a text saying, hey, by the way, here, I've written a book on how to sell a commercial building. Feel free to listen to it, provide some feedback, whatever else. It's that constant bombardment of kind of letting people know about what you do, because, I knew you interviewed Bob Knackel. So, he talks about how, 2.6% of all the inventory in Manhattan trades any given year. And let's assume there's 5% of inventory that is actually on the market every given year. If you're targeting 1,000 buildings, there's only going to ever be, let's say 100 buildings on the market, and 50 of those are going to transact in any given year. You have to be able to carve out a stake in there. So that's where, like you said, if you expand your footprint, and now instead of targeting 2,000, maybe you're targeting 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000, you increase the odds of being able to hit the transaction volume and the actual dollar value that you want to target to be able to make the money that you want. And everyone has different goals. But again, it's good to refine and understand where you stand and how you can get there.
Yeah. I love how you said, focusing on more lead generation activities and prospecting activities. I think that people who are heavy prospectors are going to do it unbelievably well in 2024 and the years to come. Again, so I wrote down actually three great tips for dominating in 2024. One of which was create and commit to a prospecting heavy schedule. We are paid to prospect. We are paid heavily to prospect. It's the highest dollar productivity activity that you can be doing on a very regular basis. So creating a schedule around 80% of your time, focus on prospecting. You're going to see the fruits of your labor very quickly in 2024 if you stay consistent. Number two, we talked about changing your behavior. These are just some things I talked about actually on the business planning workshop for 2024. So I'm just reiterating a couple key points. So changing your environment. So when it comes to changing your environment in regards to your external, where you work and where you spend your time, you want to make sure that both of those are very prospecting friendly, right? Business friendly. Because if you're with a brokerage or a team that is not prospecting friendly or business success friendly, it's going to be really hard for you to succeed. The same thing with at home. Your at home life or the people you spend time with are not business friendly or not cheering you on. They're pulling you back. So be cognizant of that. You have your internal environment. The type of content you're consuming. Are you going on Instagram and just scrolling endlessly? TikTok, scrolling endlessly, Facebook, whatever you're on, scrolling endlessly and just watching a bunch of crap content? Or are you listening to productive stuff like this type of podcast very regularly and really educating yourself, as well as the story you tell yourself in your head? Right. Like I used to, when I was going through my depression and mental challenges when I was younger, I went through about a 10-year period of time where I was having mental health challenges. My story to myself was, I just want to be worth a damn. I felt like my life was worthless. And saying that over and over again, you start to believe it. So whatever story you're telling yourself in your head in regards to anything, you're going to start believing it. So you need to be cognizant of what you're telling yourself over and over again, because like when I say over and over again, I am a billionaire, and I repeat it over and over and over again, life starts to find ways to have that come true. And then I wrote down business environment. What you're prospecting and who you prospect for is going to be drastically so much more important these days than it has been in the past, because with interest rates opening up, what you're prospecting for, like if you're prospecting for 4 families thinking that like, like that's just easy or whatever, you're going to be talking to like an average everyday person or a very, very small, 2,000 square foot retail center. It's going to be very hard for you to transact. However, if you're calling specifically on buyers who buy 5, 10, 20 properties a year, like you have a number of people who are buying a lot of product every single year, calling specifically for those people because those are the people who transact, you're going to have a different year than some people who are just prospecting to prospect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing I talk about is hiring a coach. We don't do this alone. Just there's no reason to think that you have to, that success is a lonely thing. Success is only lonely if you choose to do it alone, right? And everybody needs accountability. I need accountability. You need accountability. Everybody watching this, we need high levels of accountability in order to make sure we're not only just doing the things we know we need to be doing, but we're actually going that one step further, pushing ourselves one step further than we even know is possible. Right? It's like doing 20 push-ups a day instead of doing 30 or 40 or 50 because you don't think that you can do it because it's a struggle. But like, hey, making the adjustments in your prospecting. Like my average salesperson makes 400 calls a day. Like so there's a lot of people that I speak to on a very regular basis. Like, oh, I'm doing a lot of prospecting. I called 50 people today. 50 people is nothing. Right? Like it just, in the grand scheme of things, 50 people is nothing. Kudos to you to making your calls, but it's just a very, very small percentage of what you're actually capable of doing with the right systems in place. So anyways, those are just some things that we're working on. I'm working on, for myself, focusing on a more, in tune schedule, making sure that I'm personally prospecting a lot more, making sure my environment, I'm surrounding myself with a lot more like-minded people. I'm trying to elevate myself. I want to be surrounded with people who want to make $10-20 million a year in the investment world so that I can do the same thing. Right. And then obviously when it comes to hiring a coach, I'm actually looking at hiring another coach personally so I can hold myself accountable to doing everything that I need to be doing. So I hope those points help. And again, if you guys have any questions, make sure you drop it in the chat box down below. Would love to hear your thoughts as well. Any last minute things you want to talk about before we sign off for today?
No, man. No, I appreciate you. I appreciate all the people who do tune in and engage. I mean, this is definitely becoming a commercial real estate watering hole where we can talk about a variety of different topics, and I'm just excited to be part of it. And I'm really excited for 2024. We will have another session before the end of 2024, or 2023, I should say, next week. But again, I'm just thankful for this this channel.
Yeah, likewise. And guys, listen, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you. I appreciate you, Raphael. I hope everyone has a happy holidays. And obviously with the new year coming around, this is the time to start. Like, listen, like my team's been, we're going to prospect right up until the very end. Like we're not taking a ton of time off. We're prospecting, between every one of my agents, 10,000 people a day, every day. So it's like, let's hit it hard. Let's end the year on a high note. And again, if we can continue doing anything possible, just supporting you and your business to having the best year yet, that's what we're here for. So we appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.